The words slithered through the heating vent like poison, my mother-in-law's voice, sharp as ever. She was never good enough for this family, Tom. You know that. I've been saying it for years. I froze in the hallway, my son's freshly folded laundry clutched against my chest. 7 years of marriage, and still I was the outsider. The intruder. My name is Miriam, and this is the moment I decided to destroy my husband's family. Mom, can we not do this again? Tom's voice drifted up, tired and weak. Always weak when it came to Helen. Miriam tries her best. Tries her best. Helen's laugh cut through me. Is that what you call it? That woman has done nothing but drag down this family's reputation since the day you married her. Even little Liam is starting to show signs of her inadequacies. The laundry slipped from my hands, tiny superhero shirts and pants scattering across the hardwood floor. My fingers trembled as I pressed them against the wall for support. What do you mean about Liam? Tom asked, and something in his tone made my stomach turn. He wasn't defending our son. He was curious, concerned. Well, just look at how sensitive he is. Always crying, always hiding behind books, instead of playing sports like your brother's children. That's her influence, Tom. Her weakness seeping into him. I slid down the wall, my legs giving out. Liam, my beautiful, gentle boy who wrote poetry about butterflies and hugged me extra tight when I was sad. They were going to break him, just like they'd been trying to break me. Maybe you're right, Tom muttered, and my world shattered. I don't know what to do about it. Oh, darling, that's why you have me, Helen cooed. I've been thinking about this for a while. George and I have discussed it extensively. There are ways to handle these situations. Legally, of course. But first, we need to secure your position. And Liam's. My hands curled into fists. 7 years of subtle jabs, of helpful suggestions about my parenting, my housekeeping, my very existence. 7 years of Tom's passive acceptance, his quiet betrayals. But this was different. They were talking about taking my son. I pulled my phone from my pocket, hands shaking as I opened the recording app. This wasn't just about me anymore. They'd crossed a line, and I wouldn't let them hurt Liam. What exactly are you suggesting? Tom asked. Well, first we need to document everything. Every little mistake she makes. Every time she fails as a mother, as a wife. It needs to be systematic, darling. Build a case. And then, when the time is right. I hit record, letting their words pile up like evidence. Each syllable was another nail in their coffin, though they didn't know it yet. My other hand found my wedding ring, twisting it around my finger, a nervous habit I'd developed over the years. But this time, I pulled it off completely. The gold band sat in my palm, catching the afternoon light that streamed through the window. 7 years of trying to be good enough, of dimming myself to fit into their perfect family portrait. 7 years of watching my son slowly start to curl in on himself, just like I had. Below, Helen and Tom continued plotting my removal from their precious family tree, unaware that they'd just given me exactly what I needed, a reason to fight back. And I would fight, not just for myself, but for Liam. I slipped the ring into my pocket and began picking up the scattered laundry, my movements deliberate and quiet. Let them scheme. Let them think they had the upper hand. They had no idea what I was capable of, but they would learn. After all, they'd taught me well. Family is everything. The dining room suffocated under the weight of Helen's latest family tradition, mandatory Sunday dinners. I watched her arrange the sterling silver with military precision, each fork exactly 1 inch from the edge of her imported linen tablecloth. Miriam, dear, you've put the water glasses on the wrong side again. Her voice dripped honey-coated venom. After 7 years, one would think you'd have learned the basics of proper table setting. I shifted the glasses, my recorded evidence from yesterday burning a hole in my phone. My mistake, Helen. Though I doubt anyone but you would notice. George cleared his throat from his throne-like chair at the head of the table. Helen notices everything. It's what makes her such an excellent hostess. His words carried the weight of warning. Liam slipped into the dining room, clutching his latest poetry notebook. Helen's lips tightened at the sight of it. Sweetheart, wouldn't you rather play with that new football Uncle James sent you? I like writing better, Liam mumbled, shrinking into himself. Now, Helen said, reaching for the notebook. Let's put this away before dinner. We wouldn't want to get creative inspiration all over my tablecloth, would we? I stepped between them. The notebook stays, Helen. Liam can write if he wants to. The room temperature dropped 10 degrees. Tom chose that moment to appear, laptop in hand, completely oblivious to the tension. Sorry, everyone. Had to finish some work emails. Of course, darling, Helen cooed. Your dedication to the family business is admirable. Unlike some people's dedication to alternative pursuits. Her eyes flicked to Liam's notebook. I served the roast Helen had prepared, fighting the urge to dump it in her lap. The school's actually quite impressed with Liam's writing. His teacher mentioned publishing some of his poems in the district newsletter. Published? Tom's head snapped up. Is that really the kind of attention we want? The Blackwood name has a certain reputation to maintain. What reputation would that be? I asked, my voice steady despite my racing heart. The one where we pretend everything's perfect while tearing each other apart behind closed doors? Helen's fork clattered against her plate. I don't know what's gotten into you lately, Miriam, but this attitude is exactly why. Why what, Helen? Why I was never good enough for your precious family. Tom's face paled. Miriam, not now. Not in front of Liam. When then, Tom? When your mother isn't around to defend you. Or when she's finished plotting how to take our son away from me. The silence that followed was deafening. George's knuckles whitened around his knife handle. Helen's face turned to marble. And Tom wouldn't meet my eyes. I think, Helen said carefully, that you're becoming hysterical. Perhaps you should lie down. I'm not hysterical. I'm finally seeing clearly. I turned to Tom. Tell them what you really think about Liam's sensitivity. About how it's my fault he's not living up to the Blackwood name. That's not. I never said. Tom stammered. You didn't have to. I heard everything yesterday. Every word about building a case against me. Every plan to handle the situation. Helen's composure cracked for just a moment before she recovered. I don't know what you think you heard, but clearly you've misunderstood. We only want what's best for Liam. What's best for Liam? I laughed, the sound sharp and foreign in my throat. Like how you convinced Tom to send back the art supplies my parents got him for his birthday. Or how you've been scheduling football practices during his creative writing club. Liam looked up from his notebook, his eyes wide with understanding. Is that why Dad said I couldn't go to writing club anymore? Enough. George's fist crashed down on the table, making the crystal water glasses, perfectly positioned, jump and spill. This behavior is unacceptable. I stood, my chair scraping against the hardwood floor. You're right, George. It is unacceptable. All of it. I turned to Liam. Come on, sweetheart. Bring your notebook. We're going home. You are home, Helen said, her voice like ice. I met her gaze, feeling stronger than I had in years. No, Helen. This was never home. This was just the battlefield where you tried to break me. But I'm not broken anymore. As I led Liam from the room, Tom finally found his voice. Miriam, wait. Save it for your mother, Tom. She's the only one you've ever really been married to anyway. The bank statement trembled in my hands as I sat in my car outside the Blackwood Financial Group. Numbers swam before my eyes. Massive transfers from Helen's personal account to Tom's business one, a pattern stretching back 3 years. The company wasn't profitable. It was a sham, propped up by Helen's money and George's connections. My phone buzzed. Another message from Tom. Where are you? We need to talk about yesterday. I ignored it, focusing instead on the other documents spread across my passenger seat, paperwork I'd found in Tom's home office while he was at work. Loan applications, rejection letters, credit card statements with balances that made my stomach turn. A tap on my window made me jump. Tom stood there, his perfect suit and carefully styled hair a mask for the desperation in his eyes. I rolled down the window, keeping my hand on the keys in the ignition. You can't just walk out of Sunday dinner like that, he said. Mom's beside herself. Is that why you're really here, Tom? To defend your mother's feelings? Or is it because you're afraid I'll tell everyone that Blackwood Financial is running on empty? The color drained from his face. You went through my office? Someone had to. You certainly weren't going to tell me the truth. He glanced around the parking lot, then lowered his voice. Get out of the car. We need to discuss this privately. No. We can talk right here where there are witnesses. For God's sake, Miriam, I'm not going to hurt you. Aren't you? I held up the bank statements. You've been lying to me for years, using your mother's money to pretend you're successful. Is that why you never stood up to her? Because you couldn't afford to? It's complicated, he said, running a hand through his hair. The market took a downturn and Dad's connections weren't as strong as they used to be. Mom offered to help. Help control you, you mean? Help keep you dependent on her. And you let her, even when she tried to change our son into something he's not. A muscle twitched in his jaw. Liam needs structure. Discipline. The Blackwood name. The Blackwood name is worthless, I cut in. Just like your company. Just like our marriage. You don't understand what's at stake here, Tom said, his voice taking on an edge I'd never heard before. If word gets out about the company's finances, everything my family built will collapse. I can't let that happen. What are you going to do about it, Tom? Let your mother handle me like she handles everything else. He leaned closer, his breath fogging the window. Don't push me, Miriam. You have no idea what I'm capable of when it comes to protecting this family. That's where you're wrong, I said, starting the engine. I know exactly what you're capable of. Nothing. You're capable of absolutely nothing without your mother pulling the strings. If you breathe a word of this to anyone, you'll what? Take my son away? Destroy my reputation? Helen's already working on that, isn't she? I reached for my phone. But I've been working too. Recording conversations. Gathering evidence. One call to the SEC about your creative accounting, and the Blackwood empire crumbles. You wouldn't dare. Try me. I'm not the same woman who married you, Tom. That woman died a little every time you chose your mother over her. This woman. I held up my phone. She's got nothing left to lose. Except Liam, he said quietly. Think about what this would do to him. My hand tightened on the steering wheel. I am thinking about him. That's why I can't let him grow up thinking this is what love looks like. Miriam, please. I put the car in reverse. Go back to your mother, Tom. Tell her everything. Tell her I know about the money, the lies, all of it. And tell her this: if anything happens to me or Liam, if you try to take him from me, everything comes out. Every recording. Every document. Every dirty little secret the Blackwoods have been hiding. As I drove away, I watched Tom shrink in my rearview mirror, looking lost without someone telling him what to do. My hands shook on the steering wheel, but my voice was steady as I made the call I'd been dreading. Dad? It's Miriam. I need your help. The cafe where I agreed to meet my father felt too exposed, too public for the weight of what I needed to say. Paul Davidson sat across from me, his entrepreneur's poker face cracking as he studied mine. How long has it been, Miriam? 3 years. 4. I twisted my wedding ring, a nervous habit I couldn't shake. Since Helen convinced Tom that your business practices were questionable and could damage the Blackwood reputation. Dad's coffee cup clinked against its saucer. And now you're telling me their entire empire is built on fraud, careful accounting, and maternal manipulation. I slid my phone across the table, the recording app open. Listen. Helen's voice filled our quiet corner, discussing her plans for my removal. Dad's expression darkened with each word, his knuckles whitening around his cup. There's more, I said, pulling out the financial documents. Tom's company is Miriam. I looked up to find Helen standing at our table, her designer handbag clutched like a shield. The cafe suddenly felt airless. What a surprise, she said, voice dripping artificial sweetness. Having lunch with Paul Davidson, of all people. Does Tom know you're meeting with his business competitors? Does Tom know you're following me? Helen's smile tightened. I was simply meeting friends, dear. Though I must say, this looks rather suspicious. Sharing documents, having secret meetings. One might think you were plotting something. Like you've been plotting against me for 7 years? I've only ever wanted what's best for this family. Your family, I corrected. Not mine. Never mine. Dad cleared his throat. Helen, I suggest you leave. Now. Or what, Paul? You'll try to destroy us again? Like you tried 4 years ago. Helen leaned closer, dropping her voice. We survived you once. We can do it again. But can you survive the SEC? I asked quietly. The fraud investigators? The media? Something flickered in Helen's eyes. Fear, maybe, or respect. You're playing a dangerous game, Miriam. Think about Liam. I am thinking about Liam. That's why I can't let you win. Helen straightened, adjusting her perfectly tailored jacket. We'll see about that. Oh, and Miriam? Tom's picking Liam up from school today. He thought some father-son bonding might be good for everyone. My heart stopped. School doesn't end for 3 hours, doesn't it? I could have sworn Tom mentioned something about an early dismissal. She checked her watch. My mistake. Enjoy your lunch. I was out of my seat before she finished speaking, but Helen's hand caught my arm. Remember, dear, everything has consequences. Dad stood, his presence suddenly filling the space. Let her go, Helen. Or you'll learn exactly what consequences mean. The drive to Liam's school was a blur of red lights and terror. My phone rang Tom's number. I ignored it, pressing the accelerator harder. Another call, Helen. Ignore. My father's car followed close behind. I screeched into the school parking lot, running past startled parents and teachers. The secretary's face fell when I burst into the office. I'm sorry, Mrs. Blackwood. Your husband picked Liam up an hour ago. He had the proper authorization. My knees buckled. Dad caught me before I hit the floor. Where would Tom take him? He asked, his voice steady despite the fury in his eyes. Helen's house. He always runs to Helen's. Then that's where we're going. Dad pulled out his phone. But first, I'm making some calls. The Blackwoods aren't the only ones with power in this town. In the car, my phone buzzed with a text from Tom. We need to talk. Come to Mom's. Alone. Another from Helen. Family dinner at 7. Don't be late, dear. Liam's already helping me set the table. My hands shook as I typed a response to Tom. If anything happens to him. His reply came instantly. Just come home, Miriam. Let's fix this like a family. I looked at my father, at the determination in his face as he made call after call. We're not going alone, I said. It's time the Blackwoods learned what a real family looks like. Dad nodded, his voice cold as he spoke into the phone. Yes, I need that information immediately. And contact Judge Morrison. Tell her it's about her goddaughter's son. The game had changed. Helen wanted to play with power? Fine. Let's see how she handles it when it's not just her puppet strings being pulled. Helen's mansion loomed before us like a fortress, its manicured gardens a mockery of warmth. Judge Morrison's black SUV pulled up behind us, followed by 2 police cruisers. Dad squeezed my shoulder. Remember the plan, he said. No matter what happens in there, stay calm. We have the law on our side. The front door opened before we reached it. George stood there, his usual stoic mask cracking slightly at the sight of our entourage. This is a private family matter, he said. That's exactly what we're here about, Judge Morrison replied, stepping forward. Family. Inside, Helen sat in her favorite armchair, perfectly composed. Tom paced near the fireplace, but Liam was nowhere in sight. Where is he? My voice shook despite my efforts to stay calm. Safe, Helen said. Unlike his mother, I actually consider what's best for him. Mrs. Blackwood, Judge Morrison interrupted, I have here an emergency custody order. You need to produce Liam immediately. Helen's smile didn't waver. Margaret, dear, I didn't expect to see you involved in this. Domestic dispute. How is your son doing? Still struggling with those gambling debts. The judge stiffened. That's irrelevant. Is it? I wonder what the Judicial Review Board would think about your involvement in a case concerning your goddaughter. That's enough, Helen. Dad stepped forward. Your threats won't work anymore. We have proof of everything. The financial fraud, the manipulation, all of it. Proof. Tom stopped pacing. What proof? I pulled out my phone, playing the recording of our conversation at his office. Tom's face drained of color as his own words filled the room. If word gets out about the company's finances, everything my family built will collapse. Turn that off, George commanded. Or what? I asked. You'll add it to the list of things you're trying to take from me? My son, my dignity, my voice. A small sound from upstairs made everyone freeze. Liam's voice calling out. I moved toward the stairs, but Tom blocked my path. Wait, we can work this out. Like you worked out the company's finances? Or like you worked out how to break our son's spirit? I was protecting him. From what? From being himself? From writing poetry instead of playing football? From having feelings instead of following traditions? From ending up like you? Tom shouted, then immediately looked to his mother, seeking approval for his outburst. The room fell silent. Even Helen looked uncomfortable. "Officer," Judge Morrison said quietly, "please escort Mrs. Davidson upstairs to retrieve her son." "This isn't over," Helen warned as I passed her. "You have no idea what you're destroying." "No, Helen. You destroyed it yourself. Every time you chose control over love. Every time you made Tom choose between being a good son and being a good father." I found Liam in the guest room, clutching his poetry notebook. His eyes lit up when he saw me, then dimmed as he glanced toward the door. "Grandma Helen says you're sick," he whispered. "That you need help." My heart cracked. "No, sweetheart. I'm not sick. I'm just finally getting better. She says if I go with you, I'll never see Dad again." I knelt before him, seeing the fear in his eyes. "That's not true. But things are going to change. Remember how you told me you feel scared to share your poems sometimes? How you worry about making everyone happy?" He nodded. "We don't have to live like that anymore. We can be ourselves, without being afraid." Downstairs, voices rose in argument. I heard Dad mentioning lawyers, Helen making threats about reputations and consequences. "What about Dad?" Liam asked. "Your father has to make his own choices now, just like we do." I held out my hand, and for a moment, the world hung suspended. Then Liam took it, clutching his notebook to his chest with his other arm. As we descended the stairs, Helen's voice cut through the chaos. "If you walk out that door with him, you'll regret it for the rest of your life." I paused, looking at my son's small hand in mine, then at the woman who'd tried to break us both. "No, Helen. The only thing I regret is not doing this sooner." The Davidson family estate felt like a fortress under siege. 3 days after taking Liam from Helen's house, the Blackwoods retaliation began. First came the lawyers, then the press leaks, and finally the whispers that spread through our social circle like poison. I stood at the window, watching security guards patrol the grounds. Behind me, Dad spoke quietly into his phone. "They're trying to freeze our accounts." "Yes, all of them." "No, they won't succeed. But it shows their desperation." Liam hadn't stopped asking about Tom. Each question felt like a knife twisting in my chest. "When can I see Dad? Why isn't he calling? Does he hate me now?" The doorbell rang, making us both jump. Through the security camera feed, I saw Helen standing there alone. No lawyers. No Tom. Just Helen in a simple black dress, looking almost vulnerable. "Don't," Dad warned, but I was already moving toward the door. Helen's perfect makeup couldn't hide her exhaustion. "We need to talk, Miriam. Just us. Whatever you have to say, you can say it here." She glanced at Dad, then back to me. "Tom tried to kill himself last night." The world tilted sideways. Dad caught my arm as I stumbled. "He's alive," Helen continued. "But the scandal, the investigation into the company, it was too much." He left a note. She pulled out an envelope, Tom's messy handwriting spelling my name. "Don't read it," Dad said. "This is another manipulation." "George is at the hospital with him," Helen's voice cracked. "He keeps asking for Liam. The doctors say. They say having his son there might help." "No," I said, but my voice shook. "You're lying. This is just another trick." Helen reached into her purse, pulled out her phone. The hospital photo showed Tom, pale and small in a white bed, tubes snaking from his arms. The timestamp was from 2 hours ago. "You did this," I whispered. "You and your obsession with control, with appearances. You broke him long before I ever met him." "Perhaps," Helen said softly. "But does that matter now? Your son's father is asking for him. Are you going to deny Liam the chance to say goodbye, just to punish us?" Dad stepped forward. "Get out, Helen. Before I call security." "Wait." I took the envelope, my hands trembling. "If this is another game." "It's not. For once in my life, Miriam, I'm telling the absolute truth. Tom needs his son." I opened the letter, reading Tom's desperate words. "I'm sorry, Miriam. You were right about everything. About Mother, about Liam, about me. I was too weak to stand up to her, too afraid to be the father our son deserves. Please let him know this isn't his fault. Let him know I love his poems." The paper crumpled in my fist. "You read this before bringing it here?" Helen nodded. "Yes." "And you're using it to manipulate me again?" "Yes." Her honesty startled me. But that doesn't make it less true. From upstairs, I heard Liam's door open. His small footsteps on the stairs made my heart race. Mom. His voice carried down. Is someone here? Helen's eyes filled with tears. Real ones, for the first time I'd ever seen. Please, Miriam. I know I don't deserve your mercy, but Tom does. And Liam. Liam deserves the chance to see his father, even if it's for the last time. Grandma Helen? Liam appeared at the bottom of the stairs, clutching his notebook. The choice crystallized before me. Protect Liam from more pain, or risk everything on the chance that Tom's crisis was genuine. If I was wrong, Helen would use this vulnerability to destroy us. If I was right and refused, could Liam ever forgive me? If this is a trick, I said, my voice low enough that only Helen could hear, I will burn your entire world to the ground. Not just the company. Everything. Hele met my gaze. I understand. Liam, I called, my heart breaking at the hope in his eyes. Get your coat. We're going to see Dad. As we walked to the car, Dad grabbed my arm. This is a mistake. Maybe, I said, watching Liam clutch his poetry notebook, the one he wanted to show his father. But sometimes the right choice feels wrong, and the wrong choice feels like the only option we have. The security gates opened, and we drove into the gathering darkness, following Helen's car toward either salvation or destruction. I couldn't tell which anymore, and that terrified me more than anything. The hospital corridors stretched before us like a gauntlet. Helen led the way, her heels clicking against sterile tiles. Liam's hand trembled in mine as we approached Tom's room. George stood guard outside, his face carved from granite. He's awake, he said, then caught sight of Liam. Something flickered in his eyes. Guilt, maybe, or shame. Wait, I said before Helen could open the door. Liam, sweetheart, let me talk to Dad first. Helen's hand shot out. That wasn't our agreement. Our agreement was based on truth. I need to verify it. Inside, Tom lay against white sheets, looking smaller than I'd ever seen him. The monitors beeped steadily, marking each heartbeat like a countdown. You came, he whispered. Is this real, Tom? Or is it another one of your mother's performances? He turned his head away. I couldn't face it. The company investigations, the press, Liam knowing what a coward his father is. Stop. Just stop. I moved closer, studying his face. You've always been a terrible liar, Tom. Even when you tried to hide your mother's manipulation, I could see through it. So look at me now and tell me the truth. Did you really try to kill yourself, or is this another trick? His eyes met mine, red-rimmed and hollow. I swallowed the pills, but I called the ambulance myself. Why? Because I heard Liam's voice in my head, reading one of his poems. The one about the butterfly emerging from its chrysalis. And I realized I was the chrysalis Miriam. Trapped. Suffocating him. Suffocating you. The door opened. Helen entered with Liam, ignoring my protest. But before she could speak, Tom said something I'd never heard him say to her before. Get out, Mother. Helen froze. Darling, you're not thinking clearly. For the first time in my life, I am. Tom struggled to sit up. You can't control this anymore. You can't control any of it. Tom. George warned from the doorway. No, Father. No more silence. No more perfect family facade. Tom turned to Liam, who clutched his notebook like a shield. Son, I'm sorry. I'm sorry I tried to make you into something you're not. I'm sorry I let them hurt you and your mother. Helen's mask cracked. Everything I did was for this family. No, I said quietly. Everything you did was for control. But you've lost it, Helen. The company investigations will prove the fraud. The recordings I have will expose the manipulation. You've lost everything. I still have my son, Helen snarled. Do you? Tom asked. His voice was weak but steady. Because I choose them, Mother. I choose my son's poetry over your legacy. I choose Miriam's strength over your control. Helen staggered as if struck. After everything I've sacrificed. Get out, Tom repeated. Get out before I tell everyone exactly how you convinced me to marry Miriam in the first place. About the real reason you needed her family's connections. George stepped forward, but Helen raised her hand. Don't. It's over. She straightened her spine, dignity wrapped around her like armor. You'll regret this, Tom. Both of you will. No, I said, watching her retreat. The only regret here is that it took us so long to stand up to you. After they left, Liam approached his father's bed cautiously. Dad, do you really want to hear my new poem? Tom's eyes filled with tears. More than anything. I moved toward the door, giving them space, but Tom called out, Miriam, wait. Please stay. I know I don't deserve forgiveness, but maybe we can build something new. Something real this time. Looking at Liam, already opening his notebook with trembling excitement, I felt the weight of the choice before me. The easy path would be revenge, letting Tom's guilt destroy him, taking Liam away forever. But as my son's voice filled the room with words about butterflies and freedom, I realized something Helen never could. True strength isn't in control or revenge. It's in the courage to let go and begin again. Read another one, Liam, I said, sitting down. Your father needs to catch up on everything he's missed. The letter arrived on a crisp autumn morning, just as Liam was preparing for his first poetry reading at school. The return address showed Helen's precise handwriting, but the postmark was from Switzerland. I almost burned it unopened. You should read it, Dad said over breakfast, watching me turn the envelope in my hands. Whatever she has to say, you're strong enough to hear it now. The investigation into Blackwood Financial had revealed deeper corruption than anyone expected. Helen and George fled the country ahead of the indictments, leaving Tom to face the consequences alone. He'd chosen to cooperate with authorities, finally breaking free of his mother's influence. Liam practiced his poem at the kitchen table, his voice stronger and clearer each time. No more hiding his words. No more apologizing for his sensitivity. I opened the letter. Miriam, by the time you read this, the Blackwood name will be in ruins. Everything I built, everything I protected, will be ashes. You won, you think. But that's not why I'm writing. I'm writing because you did something I never could. You broke the cycle. You chose your son's happiness over family legacy, his freedom over control. You did what I couldn't do for Tom. I see now that my real failure wasn't losing the company or the family name. It was never recognizing that true strength isn't in controlling others, but in letting them become who they're meant to be. You were right about everything. About Tom, about Liam, about the poison I spread through this family. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I want you to know that in destroying what I built, you taught me the hardest lesson of my life. Sometimes we must burn everything down to see what really matters. Enclosed is a trust fund I established for Liam before the assets were frozen. It's clean money earned before the fraud began. Use it to nurture his gift. Let him write his poems. Let him be free in a way Tom never was. And know this, in the end, you were the daughter I should have had, the mother I should have been. Helen. A check fell from the envelope. 7 figures. My hands shook as I set it aside. Mom. Liam looked up from his notebook. Are you okay? Yes, sweetheart. Just thinking about your father's visiting day tomorrow. Are you sure you want him to hear your new poem? It's about him, Liam said quietly. About forgiveness and butterflies and how sometimes people have to break before they can fly. The wisdom in his 7-year-old voice brought tears to my eyes. When did you get so smart? When you showed me it was okay to be myself. The doorbell rang. Tom stood outside, looking different in jeans and a casual shirt instead of his usual suits. No more Blackwood Financial, no more pretense. Just a father trying to rebuild a relationship with his son. I brought something for Liam, he said, holding up a leather-bound journal. For his poems. I handed him Helen's letter. He read it slowly, his face a canvas of complicated emotions. What will you do about the money? He asked. That's up to Liam. When he's older, he can decide if he wants his grandmother's last attempt at control. Tom nodded, understanding. And us? Will we ever? No, I said gently. But we can be something different. Something better. Parents who put their child first. Friends, maybe someday. I like that. Liam appeared in the doorway, clutching his poem for the school reading. Dad, you're early. Wouldn't miss it for the world, buddy. As I watched them head to the car, I thought about Helen's words. About burning everything down to see what matters. She was right. I had won, but not in the way she thought. Not through revenge or destruction. I won by choosing love over legacy, freedom over control, forgiveness over bitterness. I won by teaching my son that strength comes in many forms, and the quietest ones often matter most. I tucked Helen's letter away, a reminder that sometimes our greatest victories come not from defeating our enemies, but from refusing to become them. Mom, Liam called. We'll be late. I smiled, leaving the past behind as I stepped into the future my son would write, one poem at a time,